Have you ever noticed how the world gets the loudest when your soul is the quietest? How silence doesn't just surround you, it presses on your chest like a memory you haven't processed yet. There's a kind of ache that doesn't scream, it doesn't shatter glass, it doesn't call for attention. It just sits, quietly, invisibly. You carry it while smiling in the mirror. You carry it while working late, being the strong one, the soft one, the one who holds everyone else together. But somewhere beneath all that holding, there's a question that keeps tapping at the back of your mind. Why do I feel so far away from myself? In this video, you're not here to learn, you're here to remember. Because stillness isn't about being calm. Stillness is where the truth begins to speak. We've been taught to equate movement with progress, noise with meaning, busyness with worth. But when you've been heartbroken enough times, when you've overgiven to the point of forgetting your own name, when your childhood taught you to shrink, in order to survive, you start to feel it. There's nothing left to chase. What's missing isn't out there. What's missing is you. And in this place, this raw, trembling quiet, you don't need anyone to rescue you. You need the kind of stillness that lets your truth come home. This isn't a lecture. You'll find no loud advice here. This is a slow unraveling of all the noise you were taught to trust. A return to your breath, your body, your inner knowing. We'll walk together through what it means to be still, not just physically, but emotionally. What it means to stop performing, stop fixing, stop fearing that rest will make you irrelevant. Because stillness, when it's real, is not passive. It's the most powerful energy you'll ever encounter. And I promise it's not going to sound like anything you've heard before. So if you've been feeling exhausted without knowing why, if you're tired of over-explaining yourself, if you crave a kind of peace that feels like remembering, you're in the right place. Breathe. Let go of needing to make sense of everything right now. Let this unfold the way healing always does, slow, soft, and sacred. And if you feel something stir as we go, if a part of you feels witnessed or moved, let that be enough reason to stay. You can subscribe if you want more of this softness in your life, or simply leave a comment if this speaks to something you've been carrying in silence. Now, let's begin. There's something nobody tells you about healing. It doesn't begin with answers. It begins with exhaustion. Not the kind you cure with sleep, but the deep soul-level tiredness that comes when you've been living in survival mode for too long. When your nervous system is so used to chaos, stillness feels like danger. When silence doesn't soothe you, it scares you. Because in the quiet, all the things you've been avoiding finally have space to speak. That's where we meet ourselves, not in the noise of fixing, not in the rush to be better, but in the raw, undistracted moment when we finally stop running. Stillness isn't the absence of movement. It's the presence of self. But here's the part that stings a little. It's not easy to meet yourself there. Because maybe you grew up in a home where silence was tension, where being still meant walking on eggshells, where your worth was tied to what you could do, how much you could carry, or how little space you could take up. So now, as an adult, your body flinches at rest. You don't even realize it, but you associate peace with punishment. When nothing's happening, your mind starts racing. You overthink texts. You question your value in someone's life. You replay conversations. You search for ways to fix what isn't even broken. Because stillness feels like danger. Because being still reminds you of all the things you couldn't control back then. But what if I told you that feeling is not a sign that something is wrong with you? It's a sign that your body remembers. It remembers the nights you had to suppress your emotions. It remembers the way you had to anticipate moods just to stay safe. It remembers shrinking, silencing, and pretending just to feel like you belonged. And that's why stillness feels unsafe. Because for so long, stillness was the silence before the storm. But the truth is now, in your present life, stillness is the safest place you can go. Because now, you are the storm. You are the one who chooses what to allow in and what to release. You are the protector you never had. Stillness is not punishment anymore. It is your sanctuary. But it takes time to rebuild that trust. To sit in quiet without spiraling. To be with yourself without needing to escape. And know this won't come through forcing yourself to meditate for an hour every day. This starts in tiny, sacred moments. Like choosing not to respond to a triggering message right away. Like taking one deep breath before explaining yourself again. Like giving yourself permission to do nothing and not feel guilty. That's the new kind of power. Because when you begin to master stillness, you start to see who you were before the world told you who to be. And once you see that you can't go back, there's a kind of healing that happens when you stop trying to be everything for everyone and finally become something for yourself. That happens in stillness. Not because you're trying, but because you've stopped trying to be anything other than what you are. There's a moment so quiet. Most people miss it when your nervous system finally exhales. Not because you solved anything, but because you finally stopped pretending that you were fine. That moment, that invisible collapse of performance, is the beginning of return. Return to self. Return to the child in you who never got to rest. Return to the adult in you who is so tired of holding it all together with grace and a clenched jaw. Stillness is the doorway, but only if you're brave enough to walk through it without needing to understand every feeling it brings. You see, we've been taught that healing is linear, that it comes in steps and milestones. But emotional wounds don't follow calendars. They resurface when life finally slows down, when you finally have enough space to feel what you've been avoiding. And that's why stillness isn't just powerful, it's sacred. Because it doesn't just soothe, it reveals. It reveals how many of your relationships were built on over-functioning, how many of your boundaries were really survival strategies. How many times you mistook anxiety for intuition simply because you were never safe enough to know the difference. That's what stillness does. It strips away the performance, and you start to hear what's underneath all that noise. Like the soft grief of losing versions of yourself no one even knew existed. The quiet longing for a love that doesn't require you to shrink. The slow, aching realization that so many of your wounds came from not being heard. And in that silence, the real healing begins. Because you're not trying to fix anymore. You're not reaching for someone to save you. You're just here, breathing, letting the dust settle, letting the truth rise. And it will rise. First, in small moments. Maybe you'll notice you no longer chase validation from people who never saw you. Maybe you'll find comfort in being alone, not because you've given up on love, but because you've fallen in love with your own company. Maybe you'll finally cry, not from weakness, but because the part of you that always had to be strong finally feels safe enough to feel. That's the power of stillness. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand, it just waits until you're ready to meet the parts of yourself you thought you had to abandon to be loved. And slowly, gently, you begin to see. The world may have rewarded your busyness, but your soul is asking for quiet, for presence, for truth. Stillness is where you learn that your worth was never in your doing. It was always in your being. And being fully, honestly, imperfectly takes more courage than any hustle ever could. So if your life feels quieter lately, if you're not sure who you are without the chaos, you're not lost. You're arriving. And when you arrive, it won't feel like fireworks or grand revelations. It'll feel like finally exhaling after holding your breath for years. There's no applause in this moment. No validation, just you, and a kind of peace that doesn't need permission to exist. But let's be honest, getting here wasn't easy. Because when you start to rest, all the parts of you that were built to protect you in the storm start to panic. The overachiever wonders if she's falling behind. The caretaker worries she's letting someone down. The people pleaser aches with guilt for choosing herself. The hyper-independent one doesn't know how to ask for help because she never learned how to be held. And you'll be tempted to go back. back to the rush, back to proving, back to over-explaining yourself to people who never really listened. But I hope you don't. I hope you stay in this quiet, just a little longer, long enough to hear the voice beneath the fear. Because there is a voice inside you that doesn't panic. It doesn't beg. It doesn't perform. It whispers. It breathes. It trusts. It knows who you are when no one is watching. It remembers the way you used to laugh before life taught you to be careful. It knows what you need, not to be more, but to be loved as you already are. And that's the kind of stillness we're talking about. Not absence, not avoidance, presence. A stillness that lets you feel joy without waiting for it to be taken away. A stillness that lets you say no without needing to explain. A stillness that lets you sit in the messy middle of grief and grace and not feel broken for it. This isn't about becoming peaceful. It's about remembering you were never the chaos. The world projected its noise onto you. It demanded your smile while you were breaking. It praised your strength without noticing your suffering. It fed off your performance, never pausing to ask what it cost you. But you are no longer feeding that world. You are choosing a new world, one that begins inside you, where stillness isn't silence, it's safety. Where your value isn't in your usefulness, it's in your existence. Where you don't have to abandon yourself to feel seen. And yes, it's a lonely road at first. When you stop performing, people start disappearing. When you stop overgiving, people accuse you of changing. When you stop over-explaining, people call you cold. But none of those voices matter. Because stillness doesn't require external approval. It is rooted in internal knowing. And the more you return to that quiet center, the less you'll need noise to feel alive. The less you'll chase people who only loved the idea of you. The less you'll betray your body for temporary belonging. The less you'll fear losing what was never meant for the version of you that's finally free. Because this stillness, it isn't a pause. It's a rebirth. And you're only just beginning. Do you know what's wild? Sometimes the most transformative chapter of your life is the one where nothing seems to be happening. You're not launching a new career. You're not falling in love. You're not crossing anything off your checklist of achievements. You're just here. Maybe you're even wondering if you're falling behind, if you're wasting time, if you should be doing more. But look again, you're finally feeling things you used to avoid. You're no longer explaining yourself to people who misunderstand you on purpose. You're slowly saying no to things that drain you even when it disappoints others. You're listening to your gut, not the fear. This is the work. This stillness is not the absence of progress. It is the birthing ground of a version of you that no longer needs to earn her place in the world. That is sacred. But of course, the world won't applaud this kind of growth because it's not loud. It's not visible. It's not easily turned into content. This kind of growth looks like crying for no reason. Like canceling plans because your soul needs solitude. Like unfollowing people who trigger your self-doubt. Like waking up and deciding not to hustle for love today. This kind of growth is messy and quiet, and so real it shakes the foundation of who you thought you had to be. Stillness does that. It doesn't just calm you. It confronts you. It lays bare every place where you outsourced your self-worth. It exposes every identity that was never yours to begin with. It brings you face to face with your truth and invites you to choose her fully. And that's terrifying because your old patterns were comfortable. Your old stories were familiar. Your old wounds kept you connected to people, to roles, to versions of yourself that were easier to carry. But comfort is not the same as peace. Stillness teaches you the difference. It shows you that peace isn't found in finally being enough. It's found in knowing you always were. That means resting when the world says push. Saying no when your past says people will leave. Holding yourself in grace when the voices in your head say you failed. Stillness reminds you that you don't have to perform to be lovable. that your softness isn't weakness, that your pause isn't laziness, that your tears aren't a sign of regression, they're the body's way of saying, we're safe now, we can feel this. And when you realize that, the noise begins to lose its power. You stop chasing people who never chose you. You stop proving yourself to rooms you were never meant to be in. You stop exhausting yourself to stay in someone's good graces. You stop, and you become. And in that becoming, you begin to understand stillness was never empty. It was always full of you. There's a tenderness that rises in you when you finally stop fighting yourself. Not a weakness, a quiet strength, the kind that doesn't need to be understood to be real. Stillness is what makes room for that kind of tenderness to exist. The kind that looks at your younger self not with shame, but with compassion. The kind that holds your past without letting it dictate your future. It's strange how, in the quiet, you finally meet the version of you who's been waiting the longest. The one who didn't have to pretend. The one who didn't hustle for love. The one who didn't apologize for existing. She's been buried beneath the noise, but she never left. And in the stillness, she comes back. Not as a memory, but as truth. That's why this space matters so much. Because you can't reconnect with your wholeness while you're performing brokenness for survival. It's okay that it took you this long. It's okay that it feels unfamiliar. It's okay that you don't know who you are outside of your wounds. Stillness doesn't need you to have the answers. It only needs you to stay. And the longer you stay, the more you start to hear something different. Not the old voice that told you you're too much. Not the echo that said you're not enough. But the voice beneath the voices. The one that says you are okay, even now. The one that says you don't have to try so hard anymore. The one that whispers you're allowed to rest. Can you feel that? Not the pressure to be fixed. Not the anxiety to explain why you're tired. Just the permission to exist softly, bravely, imperfectly. Stillness is the place where your nervous system learns a new language. Where I'm fine becomes I'm hurting, but I'm here. Where I have to do everything becomes I can trust myself to do less. Where I don't know who I am becomes I am discovering who I've always been. That discovery is sacred. It changes how you walk through the world. You stop absorbing other people's chaos. You stop mistaking their urgency for your responsibility. You stop confusing your anxiety for intuition. You begin to choose peace over performance, truth over urgency, presence over perfection. And one day, almost without realizing it, you'll wake up and not feel afraid of your own quiet anymore. You won't rush to fill silences. You won't reach for distraction every time a feeling surfaces. You won't need someone else to make you feel whole, because you'll remember stillness is not what happens when life finally calms down. Stillness is what happens when you stop abandoning yourself. And that is what makes it the most powerful energy of all. There will be days when the stillness feels heavy, when the quiet presses too close, when the emotions it brings rise like waves you're not ready to swim through. Don't run. This is part of the return, because true stillness isn't always serene. Sometimes it's fierce. It brings up grief that was paused mid-sentence, anger that was buried under smiles, loneliness that echoes louder than any noise ever could. Stillness makes you feel, and sometimes that hurts. But feeling isn't failure. Feeling is freedom. It means your body trusts you enough now to let the truth move, to let the ache breathe, to let the sorrow speak. You'll cry for things that happened years ago. You'll rage at moments you tried to rationalize. You'll mourn relationships you knew were never safe, but stayed in anyway because your younger self didn't know better. This is not regression. It's release. Stillness is the space where the inner child finally gets to scream, "I didn't deserve that." And for once, no one interrupts her. It's where the caretaker finally says, "I'm tired," and no one tells her to keep going. It's where the strong one finally whispers, "I need help," and doesn't feel ashamed. Stillness holds it all. It doesn't fix you. It lets you feel yourself fully, and that's what heals. Not the bypassing, not the pretending, but the brave decision to sit in the truth long enough that your body stops confusing it with danger. You will begin to notice the inner shakiness that used to follow you like a shadow. It softens. The need to prove something every time you enter a room, it loosens. The constant loop of overthinking and overanalyzing, it fades, because the more you return to stillness, the less power the noise has over you. You'll start to choose things that don't make sense to anyone else. Leaving a job just because it depletes your soul. Saying no to a friendship even though there was no fight. Spending a weekend alone not because you're lonely, but because you finally enjoy your own presence. You'll feel misunderstood by some, but understood by yourself, and that changes everything. You'll stop needing permission. Stop waiting for closure. Stop performing clarity when you're still in the middle of your becoming. Stillness lets you live in that middle, without rushing to the end, without needing to turn it into content, without translating every emotion into productivity. You just feel, you breathe, you exist, and slowly that becomes enough. Because for the first time, you're not afraid of what you find in your own company. Stillness didn't save you. You did. By staying, by listening, by not abandoning yourself even when it would have been easier to numb. You've given yourself the one thing you always needed, a home inside your own body, and now you begin to live from that place. And when you live from that place, everything begins to change quietly. The way you speak softens, not because you're unsure, but because you no longer need volume to feel valid. The way you love deepens, not because you're chasing anyone, but because you finally know the taste of your own affection. The way you walk into rooms, into relationships, into yourself is no longer driven by the question, will they accept me? It becomes, will I stay true to me even if they don't? Because once stillness becomes your anchor, you don't chase storms to feel alive. You don't confuse chaos with connection. You don't mistake adrenaline for chemistry. You don't silence your needs in the name of harmony. You learn that walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. You learn that not replying is a response. You learn that your peace is not up for negotiation. Stillness does that. It rewires you from the inside out. Suddenly, you're not explaining your boundaries. You're just living them. You're not seeking closure. You're choosing peace. You're not begging to be seen. You finally looked at yourself, and that was enough. There's a beautiful, almost defiant softness in that. You stop playing roles. You stop auditioning for love that asks you to shrink. You stop waiting for someone else to give you what you've already found in your own stillness. And what you found is this: you were never broken. You were bruised. You were stretched thin. You were lost in noise that never belonged to you. But broken? No, the world taught you to abandon yourself for safety. Stillness taught you to come back. The world convinced you that loud was strong. Stillness reminded you that gentle is power too. The world told you to do more, achieve more, be more. Stillness whispered, you are already enough. And now, you walk different. You listen more than you speak. You love more than you chase. You feel more than you explain, because stillness is not just something you practice. It becomes who you are, an inner-rootedness, a presence so full, you no longer need to be full of anything else. No more proving, no more fixing, no more reaching for people who can't meet you. Just breath, just truth, just a quiet self-knowing that can't be taken from you. And maybe that's the point. Not to become something new, but to return so deeply into your own soul that the world has no choice but to meet you there or move. You are not the noise. You are the one who hears it and stays still. And in that stillness, you become the most powerful energy in the room. You become yourself.